Welcome to Spectrum Days, the podcast where we ruin our childhood memories of games we used to play with me, Chris, and my cousin Phil.
Hello.
How's it going?
We're not even sure we played this one. Don't lie to people.
I definitely played this one. Definitely played this one in the arcade and some kind of home console device, I'm sure.
I think we played it on the Spectrum, which is a bit of luck.
Yeah.
We're called Spectrum Days.
I do think I played it on the Spectrum. I think I played it on the Spectrum, but I'm pretty sure I think I played it on a Master System as well, I think.
Yeah, you may well have done.
But this time around, we might well play it on a Mega Drive Mini.
I hope this is a good one, because I do remember liking it an awful lot. It was massively influential. As Chris mentioned, it was indeed an arcade game. Looking at my notes here, from back in October 1985. We were probably playing it whilst listening to The Power of Love by Jennifer Rush, which of course was a massive hit at the time. Along with Axel F and Money for Nothing by Dire Straits. So,
yeah, as we've mentioned, we probably, out of those three tunes, we were most likely listening to Money for Nothing in our dad's car.
Yeah.
We don't have the same dad, but...
You may not have the same dad, but you do have the same father in me. Which admittedly can make some relationships a bit, complicated. Anyway, Space Harrier is a very good game. Quite difficult. I've completed it.
You know,
no. We just happen to have coincidentally have the same surname. We're not related or anything. It's just really weird coincidence.
Everyone was listening to Dire Straits in those days.
No, they weren't. They were all busy playing Space Harrier. There's a good reason why we all remember Space Harrier, because it was ginormous. And I don't just mean as a hit. The cabinet was ginormous. It had sort of three variations, which I didn't realise till I was researching it, but there was three different ones. We had an upright cabinet, a normal arcade cabinet. We'd stand there with the sort of joystick control airplane type sort of control. Then it had a sit down version, and then it had the massive hydraulic cabinet version, and I think that's the one we all remember seeing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I must have been on holiday, because if I was 11 years old, I wouldn't have been going to the local arcade on my own, because because that would have involved a bus journey, I think. But yeah, so I must have been at a seaside location, so maybe in Wales or Cornwall, and I'm pretty sure it was the big hydraulic version. And those are the ones that are worth putting your money in, right? I mean, if you're going to go,
there was always a massive queue, wasn't there? I mean,
well, that's true, yeah. But that was amazing. I mean, I can remember seeing it, and it was an amazing game. There's such a feeling of, I don't think I'd ever experienced that kind of 3D gaming, that feeling that you were really in it, you were really flying, although it's third person. Should we remind people of what the game was like?
Yeah, it's funny, doing the research for it, they're sort of describing it as a sort of third-person shooter or on-rails shooter, which I'm not sure we'd have said back then. I would have thought we would have just called it a shoot 'em up. But yeah, for modern usage, it's a third person. So you're sort of the camera view is behind the character. The character is actually called Harrier, which I didn't know at the time, even though the game.
Really?
I know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, the little guy is just called Harrier. The name of the game is Space Harrier, but it was actually the reason it's got the word Harrier in it, because it was going to be a military shooting game. Right. And for reasons of complex graphics and things, the original sort of idea, they decided to change it to what we know it as now. But yeah, it's you move the character up, down, left, right. You sort of feel like you can go anywhere in it, but as we say, it's an on-rails shooter. It was using the superscalar system. which people would know from things like Outrun and Afterburner. And in fact, the game that came just before this was Hang On, which is another one of those games where you probably remember actually being sat on something that moved, which was the motorbike game where you didn't really steer. You actually leant the bike left and right, I believe, from memory, to be able to steer, which was the other game made by Yu Suzuki. Yu Suzuki made Space Harrier. And in fact, at one point when both of these arcade machines were out, Space Harrier was sort of number one for months as far as arcade machines go over in Japan. The second most successful one at the time was Hang On, so he had two hits running at the same time. Hang On and Space Harrier were the sort of first titles to use 16-bit graphics, as I say, in the superscalar system. Games that came after that were Afterburner and Outrun, as I mentioned, so all using that same system. So the Space Harrier sort of was responsible, I suppose, really for popularizing those sorts of moving into the screen type games that were sort of pseudo 3D feel kind of thing. But with Space Harrier, as we've mentioned, being on this hydraulic machine, it was like sort of flight simulators that you might only ever see on television or something like that, which us as kids had no hope of ever going in a 747 flight simulator training school machine or the machines that NASA were using, or it was sort of our first opportunity to go in something that you'd only ever seen, maybe on television, on some program from America when they were doing some documentary at some military place or something. I think that's really why it was so incredibly popular. For my personal recollection, it was definitely on holiday when I saw it. It would have been Cornwall, and one of the reasons I know that fairly for sure is this is one of those few games where my mum remembers it. Because my poor old parents, as Chris pointed out, he was 11, which means I would have been about 10, so about a year younger. So we wouldn't have been on our own. We'd have had to have been accompanied by our poor begrudging parents there with a handful of 20p's and a leash round our necks, not letting us go too far. Not that our parents are mean or treated us terribly or anything. Driving us all the way to Cornwall just to go and play on Space Harrier sounds quite good. But yeah, my mum, I only spoke to her not too long ago when we talked about the days of going to arcades when I was a kid. Is that mum says, "Oh, what was that one? The big one that moves around and you go on a dragon?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, well that's Space Harrier." And it's like, yeah, well that was it. And so mum actually does remember that one. So it had an effect on adults as well, because again, they'd never seen this great big thing that moved around, and it was kind of scary. I mean, particularly as a little kid, it wasn't designed for 10-year-olds. It was designed for sort of an adult to sit in it. And I do seem to remember watching the people who were good at it were generally much older than me. They'd be on it for like an hour and they'd have a crowd of people all watching someone play Space Harrier.
An hour?
Yeah, easily.
Stop.
No, I don't know.
Stop.
I don't know. Like it. I don't.
An hour. Our experience of any arcade conversion so far has been that they've been optimized that you could play for about 35 seconds.
Yeah, but mate, this had 18 levels. 18 levels of dragon killing fun. If you had a stack of 10p's, I mean, you couldn't do it like with a pool table. You couldn't sort of line the coins up on the table because the damn thing moved around. But there'd be some guy on there, some 22-year-old, who seemed like 100 to us, who was there playing it for an hour, hogging the damn machine. Like 10 kids waiting there with their 10p in their sweaty little hand. On the other hand, they had like candy floss or something, waiting to have a go on it.
I can definitely remember vaguely, what it looked like in a field. It was a great game. I can remember playing it at home and enjoying it too. That guy, is he wearing a red is it a jumpsuit or has he got jeans on and a red top and he's flying through the air? I can remember when you go down, you can go down and he can run on the floor. So you can run through parts, and I think you avoid trees and boulders perhaps, and the main enemies being big kind of green dragons, and there's some Easter Island heads There's some
Yeah.
Easter Island heads somewhere.
That's really weird. When I was doing the research for this, because the guy that originally came up with the plan, who wrote the sort of 100-page plan for the game that was going to be the military version that we were just referring to, being Harrier, Space Harrier, because Yu Suzuki came along and said, no, that's too complicated. Let's make it fantasy, and we'll make it a man with a thing under his arm that he can fly and shoot with. To sort of placate this guy, he actually memorialized him. So the name of those Easter Island heads is the surname of the Japanese guy that originally came up with the game. And the reason he made him the big Easter Island heads is because apparently this guy's got a big head. So I'm not sure whether it's a compliment or not. And I hope that's true. It's one of those things you read on the internet. I just love it. I think it's hilarious.
Oh yeah, very, very funny. Not funny at all. Stop laughing. My mother, she said to me, games industry, good way to get ahead. I don't think this what she had in mind.
Look, I've put you in the game. Stop complaining, okay? I know you wanted to make it military. We've changed it to fantasy. We're still keeping the same name, and I've put you in the game. You're that massive head thing there.
So do you think you've played it in the last 30 years, or?
No. I like you. I say probably as soon as I came home from the holiday, I wanted to play it, and it was available on the good old ZX Spectrum, which is where I would have played it first in the home. It did also come out on the Master System, and I did have the Master System, but I had the Master System much later on. It was the first version that they ported was onto the Master System, which I think Sega handled themselves. All the other ports were made by various different people, but I don't think I had it on the Master System because it was sort of too late by then, and by the time I got fed up with the Master System, I got to the Mega Drive, and the Mega Drive version was Space Harrier 2. So playing the original, it was arcade and then ZX Spectrum. I don't really remember playing anywhere else, but it did come out on absolutely everything. It's another one of these games. I keep saying this when we do these podcasts, but it came out on everything. All the sort of 16 bits, the Amiga, the ST, C64. It came out on the Famicom as opposed to the NES. So for some reason, I don't think it made it out of Japan. But of course, you know, through emulation and things now, you can play the Nintendo 8-bit version of it. I don't think it came out in the US. I don't think it came out in the UK. I don't know why they made that decision. Maybe it was a licensing thing. I don't know. It came out on everything. PC, the Turbo Graphics, PC Engine, pretty much everything, I think.
Have we got any magazine review comments from the time?
Yes. Well, yes. Again, because it was such an early one, I kind of didn't think it was in any of the magazines. As far as Space Harrier 2 goes, which is the only one that really came out on the 16-bit Sega, they didn't get the original one. They got Space Harrier 2, which is essentially more of the same, so it's the same sort of game, really. It is in Mean Machines issue 2, which I hadn't realised. I really didn't think it was in here. The reason I didn't think it was in it because it was a release title, a genuine release title, i.e. when the Mega Drive originally came out in Japan, there was 6 original games that came out. Well, this was one of them. So it was very early on, and I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but by the time I was working in the shop, this was old news. It got overall 77%, last ability 69%. Once you've got over the novelty of the graphics, the simplistic gameplay doesn't take long to master. You'll be pleased to hear, Chris.
Are there many buttons?
Old 6 thumbs, Chris.
Yeah, right. So I might get off level 2.
Well, our friend Julian Jazz Rignall says Space Harrier 2 is certainly an impressive game to look at. The sheer speed and smoothness of the 3D graphics is quite stunning. However, its beauty is only skin deep. The game itself is very simple indeed, and once you've seen all the different background graphics, and you can select any of these at the start level of the game, there's very little to keep you coming back. There are many people out there who love Space Harrier and are bound to go bonkers over this, but if you like your games to be more than just a pretty face, give this a miss.
Ooh.
I know. No. So he's almost saying, it's really easy. I completed it. He's almost saying that, but he's also saying just don't bother.
This is an easy game. You've got to think of it in context of 30 years ago, which is exactly when I wrote this article. I mean, did you ever play any of the games from the era? Yeah, you have been on your stupid podcast, and you're no good at any of them. I mean, have you ever actually played Manic Miner? Oh, yeah, playing that one next, are you? You think this one's hard. You wait till you get to Manic Miner. Anyway, Space Harrier 1 and 2. I completed them. They're easy.
He really likes difficult games, though, right?
He does. I seem to remember this being very blooming difficult. I don't know about you. I'm fairly sure it was hard, but we can't trust Super Julian and his opinions.
Well, in your notes, you've got someone else's opinion.
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, I've mainly put that in there for you, really, because again, I know you.
That person, Claire Edgley of Computer and Video Games, hailed it as a crowd stopper due to its realistic moving cockpit. Well, okay. How realistic can you get? It's a bloke flying through the air with a cylinder held under his armpit.
It's 1985. It's 1985, man. She's from CNVG. She used to playing things on the Spectrum and the Commodore. Of course she's going to see that and go, wow, it's amazing.
It's not realistic. If you were holding on to something that is most powerful enough to propel you through the air and then shoot a laser cannon, and you're just grasping it under your armpit, to be realistic, it would just fly off.
You're doing great.
Well, that was easy, wasn't it, Brian?
Yes, well, Julian Jazz Rignall did say it would be, so no surprise there, really.
I hope you're watching this on the YouTube channel, everyone, because I'm going to make something very funny for that.
Due to its realistic moving cockpit, graphical capabilities, and amazing Technicolor landscapes. But be cautioned. Now listen to this. Unless you are an expert, you will find it very difficult.
Julian Jazz Rignall,
yeah. We've got
easy expert.
Yeah, we've got two counter opinions on this one. Well, okay. So playability.
Well, look. Let's give it some balance. Give Mean Machines their due. They've
been wrong so far.
Well, only because I've been mean and reading good old Jazzer's comments out because he knows everything. I will read out Matt's. Okay, Space Harrier was a sensation in the arcades because of its speed and sit-down cabinets. However, its playability never really matched its looks and sound, and I'm afraid that's true of this game as well. Don't get me wrong, it's fast and furious and great fun, but lacks a variety of gameplay to make it a total winner. The aliens are brilliant, with the difficulty level pitched just right. Still well worth a gander if you're into fast shoot-em-ups are your thing. Pitched just right.
Just right.
Just right. But bear in mind, this is Space Harrier 2 on the Mega Drive they're talking about. They aren't talking about the Spectrum version.
So for this one, I think I'm going to play the Spectrum one.
Yes.
But I will be playing Space Harrier 2 because I'm in the USA and I've got what have I got? I've got a Sega Genesis Mini, which I've not even plugged in yet. I've had it for weeks, but Phil said don't play anything because we might do them on the podcast, which he was right.
Leave it alone.
All we've done is a review of the box between the two of us
It's lovely. It's square. It's got edges.
to see what differences
It's got a
there
little
are.
tab to open it.
Because Phil's got the Mega Drive one.
Yeah.
And my box was a bit better.
Yeah, that was it.
The Genesis one.
Because it says Genesis.
And I've got a plug adapter. I've got a plug with mine.
You did get a wall plug. Yes, I'm very
I've got a
jealous
wall
of
plug.
you. I don't know what I'm gonna have to plug mine into my bike, some sort of power it by bike or something. I don't know how.
You've got the European one where they're concerned about landfill and have stopped giving out wall plugs with everything, and you just got to use an existing USB plug, which is quite sensible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I am going to play on the Genesis Mini.
I believe this has got. Correct me if I'm wrong. Has it not got the original Space Harrier on here and Space Harrier 2?
I'm not sure because the writing on the box is so small, and
It is, isn't it? And
so
we're old and can't read.
I need to buckle.
So we will try and play the original arcade. For those of you who do want to play along with the second part of our podcast, the Spectrum version is available, and I will put that link, and you can play it online. I believe it's the Internet Archive. I've got it, and it actually does work quite well. I did quickly press play on it just to check it wasn't. I didn't play it, but I just clicked play on the emulator to check it actually worked, and it does seem to work well. So you should be able to play along.
Does that mean you've already heard the soundtrack?
Soundtrack, yes, please. As in keeping with the rest of our podcast, please do give us now a rendition of the Space Harrier theme tune on the Spectrum.
I can. I'll play it, and maybe we'll see in the second half of the podcast if I could.
Well, I remember the samples, the voice samples.
How did they go?
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready. You remember that? And something like "You're doing great," or something to say "You're doing great" at the end of each.
Yeah, that I can remember. But welcome to the fantasy zone.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready.
What was that about?
Well, it's because it's a fantasy, isn't it? Fantasy zone. Yeah, that's what it was, wasn't it?
Do we know where this takes place? Is
The
this on
fantasy zone. The fantasy zone.
Yeah, but
I just said it. I just said it about 6 times. The fantasy zone.
Is the fantasy zone
Near Swindon.
Is it a different dimension?
Just off the magic roundabout near Swindon.
Yeah.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready. Fire!
He doesn't look like Swindon.
Hey, look at him up there. Who does he think he is? It doesn't look like Swindon. Oh, man, you've obviously never been there off your head.
Look, someone says it's realistic. And Swindon doesn't have Technicolor landscapes.
How could you say Space Harrier is realistic?
I didn't say it. It was Claire Edgley of Computer and Video Games.
She must have been 12. She must have been their child roving reporter. Good old Claire.
Unless it is some sort of like interdimensional fantasy place, and she's been there. I mean, I don't like doing this because this is meant to be all from my memory, and then we'll play it. But if you look up Space Harrier, have you seen the front cover?
From what?
It just says Sega, so on the Wikipedia entry, there.
Space Harrier 2 or...
I don't know, but anyway, there's just some sort of big...
Has it got a Medusa sort of head, a realistic Medusa head?
No, it's got a red dragon with a green... A dragon with a red head and a green head. There's the woolly mammoth with just one eye. And it looks like you're zooming across a tablecloth covered in green magic mushrooms.
I don't recall that version. The Space Harrier 2 one, the Mega Drive one, is quite weird and is nothing like anything
just
else.
search on Google Space Harrier, click on images, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay. I'm slightly nervous now. Space Harrier images. The first one, the Wikipedia one.
Yeah. Now we're off to the fantasy zone.
Get ready.
Yeah, that was their catchphrase.
Oh yeah, look at that! Wow, that's probably perhaps that's the Japanese Master System one or something.
I don't know, but I didn't pick up on any of this when I was 11.
Or maybe that's the arcade sort of promo for the arcade machine.
It is the arcade promo, I think, because there's another one. If you scroll down, there's another, the exact same image, but there's overlaid the arcade cabinet where you can sit down.
Oh, yes. Oh, in fact, there is possibly the original Master System one there as well, with the hatched black and white boxy background thing. Look up the Space Harrier 2 and you'll see the Mega Drive one is just awful. Harrier, our hero Harrier is turned into Red Spandex Man. He looks like he's carrying one of those weird 80s sort of synthesizers under his arm that's made to look like a space rocket. While Medusa's looking on and a sort of weird robot with no head's about to stab him.
That's not a robot. That's like King Arthur. That's like some armor. With the Invisible Man inside.
Yeah.
He's fighting the Invisible Man.
It's pretty bad, isn't it?
It's awful.
I think that's what they call phoned in, where someone's just gone out there. Oh, Dave, look, we really need you to do the box art for Space Harrier 2. Space Harrier 2? What's that? Oh, it's a stupid game. It's all a bit trippy. But if you make it if you get two chessboards, right, and put them sort of on their end, have a mountain range at the back. I got a Medusa's head, guy in spandex, and some armor with nobody in it. Can you do that? Yeah. and that's what they've done. It is terrible. It's terrible.
With a giant tail. That's awful, isn't it?
It's pretty bad.
That's the Sega Genesis. In the UK, did they have that cover as well? That's awful.
Yeah, that's what I used to have to sell in the shop. Oh, yeah, I was going to mention that, wasn't I?
That is awful.
No one ever bought this. It was rubbish. No one ever wanted it. No, I don't remember. I really don't remember people being that particularly enamoured with it. And, 70-odd% in Mean Machine is very average. And as I say, when the machine came out, by the time we got the Mega Drive, no one wanted this. And no one really remembered the arcade game by then. It'd been out 6-7 years.
Yeah, I don't really trust any game that is mentioned in the same breath as Altered Beast. And it does say it was another launch title for the Mega Drive, Space Harrier 2, just like Altered Beast.
Last Battle, was that one of the other ones? Some of those release games were pretty terrible. But
I was looking forward to this game.
Oh, have I changed your mind now?
Yeah, I really do remember thinking it was absolutely amazing. Again, 11 playing the huge arcade machine, it was amazing. We'd never seen anything like it.
No.
Anything like it. Of course, context, but let's see if it's held up at all.
by playing it at home badly on a keyboard. It's really not going to do that arcade game any justice. I think we're going to have to set the bar a little lower and say, right, do we remember playing it on the Spectrum and how good is it now? I really don't think it's fair to try and compare that arcade game and hydraulic cabinet to the experience we're going to get going on the Internet Archive and playing it a version of the Spectrum. or indeed the Mega Drive or Genesis 2 Mini, and its version of it on Space Harrier 2, which I seem to remember that they changed it, they've altered it or improved it, or they've done something to the version that's on there. I can't remember what it is. Perhaps
I think it's something to do with the sprite upscaling. I don't know if the original it was different sprites and maybe in the Mega Drive Mini they were upscaling the sprites instead of using different ones. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but yeah, it's kind of a spruced up version, right?
Yeah, I think you got both on there. I think you got the original and the spruced up or something, and there might even be the arcade. I vaguely think that they've got the arcade version on there as well. So if it is, that's where we'll play it.
Should we pause and should we stop now and go and play it?
Yeah, I reckon, Joe. I reckon so. There's lots of options there for everybody to play this in one way or another. As I say, I will put the links below. I'm sure there's other versions of it are available online as well if you want to play along. But the one I should be putting on there is the Spectrum one. Or if you've got the Mega Drive Mini 2, then you can probably play it on there and join in. So we'll take a pause. It'll only be 3 seconds for you people listening or watching on YouTube. But when we come back, we'll have had a few days to mess around with Space Harrier 1 or 2 or whatever we can find. And come back and join us and see if we hate it. And you can tell us whether you do too. We'll see you again. Get ready. And we're back. Thank you to those of you who actually did press pause. Did you play the game along with us? The link is below. If you didn't, you can always press pause again now and go and have a go and play Space Harrier, particularly on the Spectrum. That's where I recommend playing it because that's where the best version can be found of this excellent game. Isn't that right, Chris?
Yeah, it's the most technically impressive. I'm amazed.
There you are. I'm glad you agree. Good old Spectrum saves the day.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I hope it was cheaper on the Spectrum as well. I wonder what the price was on the Spectrum.
Cheaper than the Mega Drive
version, yeah.
I really hope it was cheaper than the Mega Drive. I don't remember any Spectrum games being 40 quid. So I wonder whether it was budget. Interesting you ask. I wonder whether Space Harrier
it should have been budget.
Was a budget.
I'll tell you, it should have been budget on all the platforms.
All of them really
should have been budget.
Well,
It's like a tech demo. I mean, nowadays it's just. Do you imagine spending or asking for that for your birthday? You've played it in the arcade. You've been on holiday with your parents. You've put a couple of pounds in playing it over the summer holidays, and then it got nearer your birthday. Oh, I really want to relive that memory from the summer, a few months ago. So you ask for your birthday present, Space Harrier 2 for the Mega Drive.
But you sort of couldn't though, because I think we established in the first part of the podcast, it was one of the launch titles, wasn't it? I mean, it was sort of. I think a lot of people would have got that potluck. That would have been parents buying the Mega Drive and picking up that game. I mean, I wonder actually how many kids would have even realised that was coming out. Would they have known that was going to be part of the lineup?
Well, then poor parents as well. Little Johnny really enjoyed playing this in the arcade. It sat inside that huge hydraulic cabinet. Oh, he's going to love this.
Yeah, we watched him play it.
He's going to love this at home. Gets it, unwraps it, puts it in, loads just like that. Oh, great. I mean... And then just
sits in a swivel chair so you can pretend it's like the real thing.
A deck chair. His parents lifting it up behind, up and down.
His parents moving it for him.
Move me more. Make it like the arcade, Dad. Make it like the arcade.
It's like going down the swings
I'll make
with your
it like
parents,
the arcade.
making you push higher
I'll
and higher.
make it like the arcade. Give me a pound. God.
So come on, where did you so you played it? You obviously played the Spectrum then,
I played the Spectrum, yeah. First of all, I played the Spectrum, and like most Spectrum games that I play now for this, the the theme tune was just absolutely atrocious. That gives you a headache.
How does it go?
This one is terrible. That one is bad. Because where the exploding fist...
Oh, God, it's that time in the podcast where Chris impresses us with his computer theme tune impressions.
Where the exploding fist had a theme tune on the Spectrum, and it was good. This is just like the same note played drilling into your head to give you a headache again. This reminded me of the Horace Goes Skiing.
I don't think that's a theme tune. I don't think the sounds that are coming out of the Spectrum version is a theme tune.
I will admit that
you're being very generous.
I admit I was running it on an emulator, and I had it in a tab. And I was speaking with you, and I go, sorry, there's something wrong with the computer. There's a horrible sound coming out of my computer. And it was because it was Space Harrier 2 running in another tab. And I thought there was a broken cable or something. Oh, no, I can't. Anyway, we haven't even told any. Did you like the game, Phil, now playing it 30-something years later? What did you think? Oh, well, wait a minute. So, yeah. But what platform? I haven't finished answering.
I loved every 30 seconds of it. Do you know, this is a real tough one. I did enjoy it because it is so simple. But I think that's also why it's hard to continue to enjoy it. It's like playing chess with a 3-year-old. You know, they just about grasped how it works, and you play a game against them, and you beat them, and you feel good. You've beaten a kid. That's always a nice feeling. But then they ask for another game, and you play them again, and they lose again, and you don't feel quite as good as you did the first time. But you have another go, and then they just keep asking you to play it and play it and play it. That's that annoying kid that keeps wanting to play the same game, even though you're going to beat them time and time again. I'm not saying I completed Space Harrier, but it's that sort of inevitability of I'm just going to go through the same movement of making a figure of 8 on the screen. Once you've worked out that all you've got to do is just keep moving, no matter what, there is nothing that you can do in that game other than completely move up, down, left, right, up, left, up, right, up, left, down, right. You have to move the entire time and just completely spam out of the fire button the entire time. That's all you do.
Don't even need to spam
whilst getting a headache.
You don't even need to spam the fire button on the Mega Drive. So I played the Space Harrier and Space Harrier 2 on the Sega Genesis Mini 2. I think that's what I got. And I started by spamming.
You're good with those.
Yeah,
titles.
I started spamming the fire button as well until I found out you could just hold the button down as well. You don't even need to spam the button.
It doesn't go as fast. Just holding it down, it doesn't go as fast.
Boring.
When you get to that dragon thing that's coming towards you, which when you were a kid in the arcade was the most amazing thing and looked like a real dragon.
It was amazing.
Oh my God, it's a never-ending story come to life. But now, it just looks like a load of tiles and sprites sort of mushed together in this sort of wiggly thing. And you have to spam it then. You have to press that button really, really fast. The patterns are all pretty much the same. The enemies that come is a bit like Space Invaders, where once you've learnt those patterns, the way the enemies that sort of come in from the side, there's so few sort of patterns that are really there with the flying enemies. Nothing really happens with the ground, even though you can sort of move the screen and you can sort of run along the ground. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't really help you. And then you get to that bit where it's the checkerboard, the moving vomit-inducing checkerboard thing. You get to the top, it goes above you and below you, doesn't it? And it's just Kenny kids out there who've never done acid. That's what it's like. That is basically what it's like. And you will throw up. Your eyes will bleed. Your ears will fall off. Your thumb will warp from spamming it. And that level, I just kept dying. And you just get in the... it falls down. And then you hit another pillar. And then you hit another pillar. Oh my God, that level. Drove me up the flipping wall.
Yeah, I can't believe that it made me want to go back and play The Revenge of Shinobi or Ghouls and Ghosts. It was that bland. I mean, at least those games were hard and you knew what was going on. This is just like a tech tech demo. I mean, on iPhone, I've been playing a lot of endless runners. I was researching some endless runners for a possible, like a project we were doing, and they're more fun nowadays. It's got that endless runner kind of mechanic. You are endlessly running, going forward or flying. But just the angle and everything, you can't really see where you shoot. I mean, you know where you're shooting, but you don't. It's just a blur. There's not much particular skill involved, or any anything exciting going on. There's no power ups. There's no choice. There's not much choice that's going on. It's just bland, the same again and again. Just feels to me like a technical demo. Someone like, probably sounded great idea, great concept, never been done before. Let's try that. But as a game playing today, it's kind of bland and boring.
I think this is probably one of the first games I think that we've looked at where it's very much entrenched in a physical feeling, literally and figuratively, in that game was very much designed, to be played with a yoke and not with a D-pad. So the three iterations, which we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, there's 3 different cabinets, but what they all do share is that yoke. So for a start, you've got that flight, this is very loosely flight simulator-esque controls of that character, as it was designed around that. But the main theme, the main physical theme, was that hydraulic cabinet that you would get in and feel like you were Mr. Harrier flying around with his rocket under his
we'll
arm.
Get onto that.
You're losing all of that by putting it into the home version and using it with a control pad. I mean, not even with like a joystick. I mean, by then joysticks were old hat by the time this game came out. Even though, yes, you could get joysticks for the Mega Drive and things, but I didn't. No one ever had one. Everyone just used a control pad. Vast majority of people. So I think in its defence, the game just isn't meant. It's really not meant to be played in the way that we are experiencing it. I think if me and you found an arcade and they're becoming really popular again, and thank God for that. I'm so pleased they're coming back. Certainly, you'll give me a funny look, but in the UK, there's a lot of arcades that have come back now with all these retro arcades. And they're in America too, aren't they? I think there's 1 or 2 around. You might have to go to Seattle or something to go and find one. But
I went to one in the Bay Area recently, but it was more of a kids one. There are a few. I need to investigate. But you're convincing me almost that it would be great if we played it in the arcade. But
would you like to buy a car?
But no, I think it's kind of like it's interesting. It's interesting, this whole thing about.
I have this religion you'd be interested in.
It's about memories. We're capable of convincing ourselves that it was good just because it had a joystick.
Hey, take it from me, Mr. Harrier. Life can be improved with a joystick, and I'm a guy who's got a rocket under his arm. I still find time to play with my joystick. Oh, yeah.
And it was rubbish. I think it's still rubbish. If you find one now, it'll still be rubbish. But I'm almost convinced.
Well, then that's our mission, isn't it? We've got to find that original cabinet. I suppose probably a weight limit now. When you're a kid, you're probably allowed on it. But I think anyone over 10 stone, you're not allowed in the damn things now. And a height
find
limit.
One is going to be so it's going to be so it's going to be such a letdown if we would ever find one. I'm sure.
There's a guy there with a wee balance board checking everyone's weight before they get on it.
I think I saw one on eBay for like $7,000 or something. So if anyone wants to,
a wee balance board,
the Space Harrier 2 cabinet.
I see. Well, let's start a Kickstarter or whatever it is to get the money.
If anyone wants to donate us a Space Harrier 2 cabinet, you can contact us at hello@spectrumdays.com. Please send us one over. Or 2. We'll actually need 2.
put your name on it. So, yeah, and can you send one to America and one to the UK? I bet it's smaller than we remember.
That's
We were
what I'm
kids then.
saying.
It looked massive. I bet it's no bigger than a chair.
And do you think it was? Do you think the joystick was an analog kind of joystick, or was it even that? I mean, it was there. There wasn't. It's probably just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there was no.
It probably was just sort of micro switches. It's probably
It was left and right. It's not just
knows.
It's not. Yeah. I don't know.
I can't remember. I expect producer John will look that up for us and give us a nugget of information. I know he's got it on speed dial joysticks, and their waggling capabilities. He's probably asking
Chat GPT or GPT chat.
He's playing with his joystick now. Talking of ChatGPT, the new AI robot that will write all our blogs for us, weren't you asking it things about Space Harrier?
Yeah, because it did come to our attention that the main character in Space Harrier is holding a rocket launcher like under his arm to fly around, and so we did ask, or I asked the GPT chat in the game Space Harrier, how is it possible that the main character can hold the gun that enables him to fly without dropping it? And the response came quite right too. The response came: Space Harrier is a fictional game, and therefore it is not bound by the laws of physics or reality. In the game, the main character is able to hold a gun that enables him to fly without dropping it, because it is a gameplay mechanic designed to allow players to control the character and progress through the game. In the context of the game, this ability is not meant to be taken literally or to be explained by real-world physics. It is simply a feature of the game that allows players to enjoy the gameplay experience. So there you go. I mean, it was annoying me that he was flying around with this thing under his arm and it didn't get ripped out of his arm. And I just wondered why they just didn't make a jetpack. But I suppose, no, that wouldn't have worked. I don't know. But, yeah.
I think you've been in the games industry too long if you're worrying about how a character manages to fly or shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so crazy to think, Chris, that you were playing that acid trip of a game where there's checkerboard things flying towards you, golem heads and woolly mammoths with one eye, and you were worried about how the guy can hold onto a jet and fly with it whilst it shoots. That was the thing you were worried about.
I was also worried. Why could you destroy the standard rocks, but the heads made out of rock material could be just destroyed with one shot? I mean, in all seriousness, of course, a game is not GPT.
Not the flying dragon. No, that's normal. That's fine.
In the fantasy land, it is.
That's okay.
In fantasy world, welcome to the fantasy zone. Sorry, the zone. In the fantasy zone, all those things are possible.
Get ready.
Yeah, because there's always more adventures coming soon or something. What is that text?
Yeah, what is that?
When you die,
perhaps someone can help us with
yeah,
that.
we didn't know why the text was so strange when you die. It says something like there are more adventures coming. But yeah. No, I mean, in all seriousness, of course it doesn't need to be realistic. And of course this is a fictional fantasy game. But I don't know. It's just like double-headed dragons.
You wanted him to be in a plane, strapped in, with a little warning at the beginning, showing you where the exits are.
Well, it makes me think that maybe Afterburner would be a good game to play. I bet that's great. I bet Afterburner's definitely stood the test of time, right?
By the same bloke. It's the same engine, same bloke, same 16 board, I think.
Would have made much more sense, Afterburner.
and Outrun. Well, we said all this at the beginning, didn't we? But yeah, I mean, they're all the same breeding.
Do you know what score you got on Space Harrier? Did you?
I expect people now, if they're watching us on our YouTube channel, which we also have a YouTube channel, if you're only listening to us on our podcast, our lovely podcast, we also have a YouTube channel. I expect you're watching the footage right now of me completing it. Which, no, I didn't. I didn't come anywhere near to completing it. And I actually can't remember, Chris. You'll have to watch the video when it releases, because no one else is. So you might as well watch it.
Yeah. I thought that I got over 6 billion or something on my first go.
No, you just can't read numbers. I don't know whether he's going to confess this, everybody, but he was very, very proud when he started talking. Hey, Phil, I've written my score down. And he goes to read out a load of numbers. 782 3946 28172.
That's your parents. That's your telephone number.
What is that? It is. Please dial it. Tell us what you get. Probably golf team.
I don't know. It was just like my first go on Space Harrier 1 on the Sega Genesis. And I did use the continues, but it was just like, oh yeah, flying through it. Yeah. But yeah, general impression, it was boring, bland, and it made me want to even go back and play the Revenge of Shinobi. So.
There is a bonus stage. There is a sort of in-between bonus stage where you do get on the back of
yeah.
Which I believe was inspired by Neverending Story, which is all a lovely moment. And that was the moment I mentioned in the first part that that's the bit my mum remembered watching when we were all there down at the seaside.
And why there were some kind of icons that come up in the middle of the screen, which are trees.
Yes, that you're I think the idea is you're supposed to hit trees. I think it just tallies up the number of trees that you've eaten.
Yeah, but it took me a while to work that out. There was no instructions of if you had to. I mean, you the rest of the game is avoiding anything that's on this part of the scenery. So now all of a sudden, on the bonus level, you're on the back of a dragon and you have to seem to collect or hit into the trees. So, yeah, it wasn't particularly clear.
Yes, that's all I could work out. I assumed that's correct. Again, if we were very, very wrong, please do let us know in the comments.
Didn't really affect much. It's not like...
No, it was just a bonus score.
Yeah, so it's all just about the score.
But it did add a few 1, 2, 7, 8, 6, 9s to the score,
mine was like
it?
6 billion or something. I probably completed it.
It's a brillion. Quadrillion, something, and 6.
Yeah, so...
It's difficult with them big numbers, isn't it? Back in the day, in the 80s, them big numbers.
It was
hard.
trying to make it look impressive. Yeah.
So do you feel the need to go back to playing Space Harrier ever again?
Unfortunately, no. I don't think I'll ever play that again. No. Okay. And it was like, I don't know, it's like Speedball left me that kind of sensation. It was very bland, like, not much to it. This, same again, at least with the way of the exploding fist, there was something relaxing. I liked the animation. You thought, that's really cool, the animation on the Spectrum to do wear the exploding fist. So that was kind of a bit like low, like calm and relaxing as well. But this, just nothing of consequence happens in Space Harrier. That's what I felt.
Yeah, I mean, having played a few versions, we obviously played the Spectrum. I played the original arcade on the MAME, which I'm sure people, if they're watching the video, would have seen. There's some footage of that. And we played the new version of the original Space Harrier on the Mega Drive Mini, and Space Harrier 2, which is more of the same. We've barely touched on it, and that's why we have barely touched on it, because there's no massively discernible difference between the two. And just for the sake of completion, I believe that version was a sort of updated version to make the graphics better, improve the sort of rotation and sort of moving into the screen effect, because that's a technical term, that much better. And I didn't really notice, because I couldn't remember playing the original Space Harrier 2, so I couldn't particularly tell the difference. I'm not sure whether you can turn off that effect in the Mini 2. I couldn't see whether you could or not, actually.
No.
But they're so similar. They're so similar. Space Harrier 1 and 2, if you've played one, you've played them all. They are basically the same things. I'm sure the game has got its fans. I'm sure there are people who will play us for an hour and then to get a high score, 60,20,506. I'm fairly sure. I'm fairly sure people
on the Mega Drive Mini. I mean, Space Harrier. It's the first one. It flickers, I think, a lot more than Space Harrier 2. You can see that it was quite flickery. And then on Space Harrier 2, one of the first enemies you get, the bigger enemies, is a flying turtle with 3 heads. So that's different, yeah. But yeah, not much to it. Not much to it. Is this a game? If you really wanted to get someone into retro gaming, because you're a retro gamer, and you wanted to convince me to label myself as a retro gamer, is this one that you would say go off and play?
I think I've already said it. I think that it is that arcade experience that you've got to be sitting in that machine. That's what this game was designed for. It doesn't work translated onto the Mega Drive. And you also said it, that it's a tech demo. And that's why they did it. It's why they made it a launch title. It was a very successful arcade machine. Everyone knew it. And it is impressive. Back then, 1988, 89, when this would have come out, it would have looked amazing. That Space Harrier 2, again, we were just saying it, is identical to the first one, and the graphical difference between it and the arcade are fairly negligible, to be honest. You wouldn't have known at home. You wouldn't have had the arcade machine sat next to your 14-inch little colour TV, if you were lucky, with your Mega Drive plugged into it with an RF cable. You wouldn't have been able to tell the difference anyway. It's a great game. It is good, but I think by today's standards, even as a shooter, there are other better shooters that will probably hold your attention far more than Space Harrier will, sadly.
Yeah. So we should play another classic retro game then. Something. What would you suggest?
Space Harrier 3 is going to be the next game that we. I've heard it's really good. It's got pink, orange, and blue levels in it.
But what game?
And it's not just like doing acid.
What game would you recommend?
Well, I think we really should be sticking to our name more. I think people are wondering why on earth we're talking about anything else other than on the Spectrum, because every game on the Spectrum is a good game, so that's really what we should be looking at. So I think Manic Miner.
Ah, the classic Magic Miner, brilliant.
Yeah. Magic Miner. That is the one, everybody, that we're going to be looking at
Manic
next time.
Miner.
Join us then for some lovely coal mining fun.
Manic Miner. That'll be great.
Yeah. Guaranteed.
Best one yet.
I've completed it. You can email us at hello@spectrumdays.com, and you can contact us on Twitter @SpectrumDaysPod. And you can also find us on YouTube just by looking up Spectrum Days.